This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful Memorial Day. Obviously, paying tribute and homage to our great servicemen and women who have sacrificed and served our country in the most honorable fashion. Our love and our thoughts are always and forever with you. Number to call up again, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You know when something's so obvious they call it a no-brainer? Well, here's a big one. Barbasol is finally making razors. Introducing the Barbasol Ultra 6 Plus. It's got 6 ultra-thin blades for a close, comfortable shave. You can go to Barbasol.com right now and save some money. That's a no-brainer, too. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. We have an NBA Finals. And the NBA Finals, unfortunately, is all too predictable. It will be LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers going up against Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and a reigning defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors. There's a lot to get into in terms of what happened in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I'm still in Houston, Texas, in H-Town, home of the Houston Rockets. And I got to tell you something right now. I got mixed emotions about this. On one hand, it was absolutely great to see Kevin Durant step up and play like the star that he is, finishing with 34 points on better than 50% shooting, 52.5 to be exact. Okay, having 3 blocks along the way, hitting big-time shots in the fourth quarter, which was totally opposite of what he did in games 4 and 5 of this series. He showed up and showed out and played like the reigning NBA Finals MVP that he is and handled his business. Steph Curry was stellar, 27, 10, and 9. He finished the game with getting to the basket, hitting threes, moving without the ball, running the show, rebounding, assisting, and showing himself to be that true point guard that he's capable of being. Klay Thompson, despite 2 early fouls within the first 54 seconds of the game, still made big-time contributions, finished with 19 points, hit big shots that mattered. Draymond Green was rebounding the basketball and assisting. Sean Livingston was giving you steadiness when he came into the game and played some role at point guard spot. Even Swaggy P, who only scored 3 points, who only hit the only shot that he took, still gave you a quality 16 minutes. And if it wasn't for his absolute idiocy in that post-game interview with Ernie Johnson, which was nothing short of embarrassing, I'd actually be praising him more today. Just for being able to give you the 16 minutes he failed to give you in Game 5. Because obviously the Golden State Warriors didn't have Andre Iguodala available to them because of his knee injury. So all of those things are superlatives that you have to throw out, and you have to give major props and what props is due to the Golden State Warriors for showing up and showing out in the Game 7 the way a champion is supposed to, at least in the second half. First quarter, they looked disastrous. Second quarter, they didn't look too much better. But they put on the afterburners like they always do in the third quarter. Another third quarter explosion. This time they outscored Houston by a margin of 33-15 and basically went from an 11-point deficit to a 7-point lead. And we knew from that moment forward that it was what it was. What was coming was the inevitable. That's the Golden State side. Here's the Houston Rockets side. I can't help but stand here today feeling sorry for CP3. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't blame anybody for believing that if CP3 had played last night, that the Rockets would be the one in the NBA Finals instead of the Golden State Warriors. Chris Paul, in his 13th season, Game 4, Game 5, being the biggest games of his life, showed up and showed out and played with such poise, with such greatness, with such leadership that you can't even sit. It's just no denying how great this guy is. He's 6 feet to be kind. Can't play above the rim. All right. But is a pit bull. Vastly improved his jump shot. Knows how to run a team. He might be a tad bit shy of John Stockton in some people's eyes. In my eyes, I think he's better, just not tougher. As tough as he is, and he is a pit bull, never has been blessed with the durability that John Stockton has been blessed with. And that is the problem with CP3. Durability, pretty much nothing else. And you watched Houston last night. And there are those out there that are willing to sit up there and say, James Harden choked. I disagree. I don't think he choked. I know he shot 2 of 13 from three-point range. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you just have a bad night shooting. He hit 10 of 16 shots from two-point range. He finished with 32. It was on 29 shots, no doubt, 12 of 29 from the field. I get that. But I'm not going to call it a choke job. Last year might have been a choke job because that was an imposter wearing a James Harden jersey that showed up in Game 6 against the San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference semifinals when they ended up losing 114-75 to the Kawhi Leonard-less San Antonio Spurs. That was an abomination. No question about it. You lose by 39 points at home in a closeout Game 6 against the San Antonio Spurs team without Kawhi Leonard, and you spent the first 16, 17 minutes not even shooting the damn ball. That's a choke job. There's no way around it. But this, no. James Harden went out there. The jump shot wasn't falling, meaning the threes, but he was still scoring. Houston was still in the game. Key pivotal turnovers down the stretch. Got to hold him accountable for that. But when you are not the point guard, when CP3 is your point guard, and ultimately you have to take over ball handling abilities, and you end up dribbling the basketball more than the entire team, this according to a stat by Second Spectrum Analytics, you got to remember something here. That's foreign territory for you this year because you didn't have to do all of that with CP3 around this year. James Harden was the lone ball handler Houston had. James Harden had to carry the load all by his damn self in that category. And then when you couple that with the fact that he's going up against a three-headed monster in Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry, and you combine that with the fact that Trevor Ariza plays 41 minutes and goes 0 for 12, 0 for 9 from three-point range. Gordon shoots 2 of 13 from three-point range, or 2 of 12 rather. And collectively, you shoot 15% from three-point range, 7 of 44. With Mike D'Antoni, God bless him, my coach of the year, did a damn good job this year, but last night had no alternative plan other than launching threes. What do you expect? I can't sit up there and look at James Harden and accuse him of choking. I can consider him somebody who hasn't proven he's on the level of a Kevin Durant and those guys. I can tell you a superstar didn't play like one last night. I could tell you that he played less than what he was supposed to play. I can give all of that. I can't call it a choke job. I call that a bad game compared to his standards. That's what I could call that. I can't call that a choke job. A choke job is not shooting 12 or 29 from the field and finishing with 32 points. To me, that's not a choke job. That's not a choke job. Last year might have been. Not last night. Not considering the conditions. Now, maybe if CP3 was out there and James Harden had the freedom to be off the ball and didn't have those responsibilities and played the way that he played and didn't look gassed while doing so, maybe you got an argument. But that wasn't the case last night. The case last night is that James Harden was triple teamed, essentially. And as a result, he was exposed because of it. That's what I see. That's what I have to look at. And that's why I can't accuse him of committing a choke job. No, I'm not going to do that to James Harden. I'm not going to do that to him. That's not right. That's not right. No CP3, Mike D'Antoni coaching, so desperate to get any kind of shooting that he actually inserted Joe Johnson and Ryan Anderson into the game for a few minutes, who hadn't even played pretty much this series. But with Ariza and Gordon and P.J. Tucker giving you close to nothing offensively, even though Eric Gordon tried his tail off, what are you supposed to do? And speaking of Eric Gordon, by the way, while I may not like his overall production from three-point range in terms of his shooting ability, let me say this. I've become a fan of his. I really, really have. He puts the ball on the floor better than I thought he could. Better than I thought he could. That's God's honest truth. I got to give credit where credit is due. I really, really do. I was pleasantly surprised by what I saw from him in this series. He showed me something. And I like Eric Gordon. Just wasn't his greatest night. P.J. Tucker only shot 5 of 9 from the field and 2 of 5 from three-point range. He wasn't awful. P.J. Tucker did his job. But Eric Gordon shot 9 of 22 and 2 of 12 from three-point range. Harden 2 of 13 from three-point range. It was not Harden's finest night, but there are circumstances that come with that we can't ignore. After the game, obviously, the Warriors were in a good mood. And they pointed the finger at James Harden in their own subtle ways. Listen to Kevin Durant talk about James Harden. Take it away, y'all.
They came out with a lot of energy. They're at home. They hit some shots early. We knew at some point they'd tire out. I mean, James dribbled so much each possession. I know at some point he'll wear down. And, we was going at him on the defensive side of the ball as well. So we just tried to stay with it, shoot good shots, play hard defense.
That might have been a backhanded slap by Kevin Durant. So what? It happened to be true. If you don't have other ball handlers, James Harden's going to dribble the ball a lot. That's going to play into Golden State's hands because, as Draymond Green told me after the game, we just needed to be patient. Eventually, they would wear down because customarily, Mike D'Antoni is only playing 7 guys. So we weren't really worried that they would be able to sustain what they were doing without CP3. We just needed to be patient, and that's what we did. James Harden had his own interpretation of things. Listen to what he had to say.
Just in that second half, our pace wasn't there. That third quarter, I was trying to get the guy, come on, let's go. It's time, but we just didn't have that extra juice that we needed. I don't know if it was the big minutes. I don't know what it was, whatever it was. But, in that sense, you throw Clint pick and roll, you throw it to Clint. Clint finds the shooters, or Clint finishes the basketball. We executed that in the first half. Not so strong in the second.
They couldn't find anything. I felt bad for Clint Capella because I got to tell you something right now. As a guy that's going into a contract year, even though they were a minus 13 when he was on the floor, he hit 9 of his 10 shots. He had 9 rebounds. He had a couple of steals. He didn't play a bad game. And when you're going against a primarily perimeter shooting team in the Golden State Warriors, there's but so much you're going to be able to do if you're Clint Capella. He was out there trying to guard Kevin Durant on the perimeter. Clint Capella is an asset to this team. And he didn't play bad. P.J. Tucker played well. Eric Gordon, despite going 2 of 12 from three-point range, he just couldn't hit threes. Him and James Harden couldn't hit threes. Combined, they were 4 for 25. That's horrible. Absolutely true. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you something. It was far more complicated than that. Because when you don't have CP3, it just causes a whole bunch of problems. Let's consider CP3's reasons for coming to Houston and Houston's reasons for wanting him so desperately in the first place. CP3 was in L.A. CP3 wanted to go someplace where he didn't have on-ball responsibilities all throughout the game. Every single play that Doc Rivers ran for the Los Angeles Clippers went through CP3. Every single one of them. And so if you have that and you're CP3, not only do you have that responsibility, but you never had a guard like James Harden to lean upon The best you could have was J.J. Redick's sharp shooting ability, but we know J.J. Redick ain't on the same level as James Harden. What was he supposed to do? So CP3 leaves over $200 million on the table in 5 years. He decides to come to H-Town. He plays off the ball sometimes on the ball. He brings a more of a defensive, fiery mentality to the Houston Rockets. He's got on-ball responsibilities. He knows how to calm a team down. He knows how to run a team, but he also knows how to get off the ball and not just be a scorer, but to get off the ball and play role of spectator because of what James Harden brought to the table. And that couldn't be denied. So that's what CP3 came to Houston for. And as a result, they win game 2 in a blowout. They get blown out by 41 in game 3, then come back and beat Golden State in game 4. Not only do they tie the series up, but then they come to H-Town in game 5. And CP3 and those boys are going berserk. And they're giving it to Golden State. And then in the last minute, he strains his hamstring. Grade 2. I'm on the phone with Allen Iverson yesterday. Allen Iverson says, ain't no way in hell CP3 playing this game. I had that same injury. It's a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. Minimum. And it might be worse. There's no way in hell. Stephen A., I don't care what they tell you. There is no way in hell CP3 is playing in game 7. It ain't happening. It's a minimum 2 to 3 weeks. And sure enough, he called it. So CP3 can't go. That puts the onus on James Harden. James Harden against Steph Curry. James Harden against Klay Thompson. James Harden against Kevin Durant. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? Having said that, you were reminded about what it's going to be like for Houston to play without CP3. And more importantly, how close or not close the Houston Rockets are truly to the Golden State Warriors. Listen to Coach Mike D'Antoni talking about playing without CP3.
We knew it was going to be tough without him, and it's mostly I hate it for him. He's probably more devastated than anybody. But again, I know the fans of Houston, and especially myself, is just to have him on your side is incredible. He'll be back, and like I said, he'll be even better. We'll be better, but he's what's always right about basketball. Why we get into it and what he does in the community and how he speaks out for the rights of people. And there's just so many layers to him as a person that I like being around him. It makes me a better person.
Could have said it better myself. Look, I sit up here with you as the host of this radio show, and I have an obligation to you in my mind to call it like I see it. People are not playing in the closet or in the privacy of their own homes or anything like that. If they're watching something, it's your responsibility when you're in my position to tell them what you think you're seeing. Whether they agree or disagree, you have to give people the truth as you know it or as you feel it to be. But it goes a bit deeper than that with certain athletes. And Chris Paul is one of those people. He's not just a leader. He's not just a future Hall of Famer. He's not just one of the great miniature point guards in the history of this game, if not one of the great point guards in the history of this game, period. He's also the president of the Players Association. If you look at what he does for the most part, I never forget earlier this year when, whether directly or indirectly, he was involved in, some supposed confrontation with his former team, the Los Angeles Clippers, where guys for the Houston Rockets were trying to get into their locker room. And my argument was CP3 has no business being a part of something like that, period. You're the president of the Players Association. You can't even have reports of that, accurate or erroneous. You can't be a part of reports like that when you're the president of a Players Association. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been in the league for 13 years. Could you find something else that you could say about CP3? In terms of off-court behavior, he's an incredible role model. He's got a wonderful family. His brother's really good people. I can't say enough about his parents. He's a family man in so many different ways. Just an incredible, incredible role model to a lot of guys. The Donovan Mitchells of the world spoke up about him when he played Utah in the semifinals. You just can't say enough about him. And I bring all of that up not to sit up there and get all emotional or soft or anything like that. It's to say to you and articulate as best as I possibly can how sad I am that this man could not play in Game 7. He had never been to a conference finals in his career. Finally got there this year and was 49 to 50 minutes away from a trip to the NBA Finals to go against his buddy, LeBron James, whose children have Chris Paul as their godfather. And you just look at that and you just said, oh, this is going to be special. I can't wait to see this. This is going to be something nice, something special right here. And then 2 minutes practically before Game 5, comes to an end, he goes crashing down because his durability or lack thereof gets the best of him yet again. Chris Paul hasn't had the perfect career on the court. There was a meltdown in 2014 against Oklahoma City that folks don't want to forget. Obviously, he was a member of the Clippers the first year the Golden State Warriors won the championship when the Clippers had the Rockets on the brink. Game 6, semifinals, Staples Center, up 19, and then got blitzed by Dwight Howard and Corey Brewer. Those couple of moments we'll never forget. But for the most part, throughout his 13-year career, he has been nothing short of illustrious as a point guard. And now here we are with him basically missing out on the Game 7. I don't know about y'all, but that kind of stuff just makes me sad. It really, really does. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him, "Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash." His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Back to the phones we go. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. I knew my boy from Detroit. I should stop saying he's from Detroit. I mean, he texts me. He brags about being in Miami on the beach. You know, he brags about being in Vegas. Every time he's in a warm weather city and I'm someplace freezing, he's always rubbing my nose in it. My boy Champ is on the line right now with yours truly. What's going on, big time? How are you, man? I wanted you to call up here.
I'm great.
I want to hear your thoughts about it. Give me your thoughts right now.
Well, first of all, congratulations to the Cleveland Cavaliers and Golden State Warriors for making their fourth appearance to the NBA Finals. It's really a spectacular series. But the mood that I'm in right now is the talk all season was how great of an executive Morey was. Now, he's on the hot seat now because this coach and Mike D'Antoni, he choked. And it happened in the Utah series. He did not get Joe Johnson ready. He was supposed to get Joe Johnson ready because Joe Johnson could have been the X factor when you switching. He could have had Steph Curry in the post. I constantly kept saying this. No one's holding Mike D accountable. They was up 17 in Game 6. They were supposed to control tempo. They sped the game up, and they got smacked. Last night, if you watch the game, they had it right in their hand. Klay Thompson gets 3 fouls in the first half, and they didn't take full advantage of it. If you watched it from the sideline, he never coached a game. He is the Marty Schottenheimer of basketball.
Well, let me stop you right there. Here's my definition of choking, okay? This is my definition of choking. You do what you do all the time until the biggest moment arrives, then suddenly you can't do it. Now, the problem with your argument about Mike D'Antoni is that the Mike D'Antoni you described is the Mike D'Antoni I've always known. He'll play a bunch of guys through the regular season. He'll go 9 or 10 deep. He'll run you up and down the court, and then the postseason arrives, and he don't want to let more than 2 guys off the bench. It was like pulling teeth to see him, for him to put Joe Johnson and Ryan Anderson in the game. You trying to tell me when you've got a Draymond Green on the floor, if you've got a Jordan Bell on the floor, You can't find a few minutes for Nene? Of course you can. But he doesn't do it. He's never done that, though. So that, to me, is not choking. That is a philosophy that he has that you may not agree with, champ.
But I agree with you saying, but it's a form of coaching. But here's the thing.
I'm just saying it's not choking. I'm not saying it's not coaching. I'm saying it's not choking.
Okay. I respect that. They have a guy that's sitting behind the bench by the name of John Lucas. He's in his 60s. Yep. I mean, this guy knows all the NBA players, all the young guys coming up.
Yep.
I say make the move now today. You fire Mike D and give Lucas the opportunity to change the culture.
Absolutely
That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely not. Just because you disagree with what you saw, and I disagree with what I saw from Mike D'Antoni. I think your points are valid, but I don't think your points are a fireable offense. If Mike D'Antoni
philosophy is like George Steinbrenner. You know what I mean? I want to win a championship.
I got you. But my point to you is this. John Lucas, God bless him. I know him. I talked to him throughout the conference finals. Great man. We all know what he's overcome in his life. We all know he knows basketball, but he's had his opportunities to be a head coach in this league. I wouldn't call for him to be the head coach in Houston now. That's number one. Number two, and more importantly, when you talk about Mike D'Antoni, okay, the reality of the situation is that you could have dictated pace a little bit better than you did in Game 6. We get that. Game 7, he could have prepared Joe Johnson better to be ready for Game 7. All of that is true. That's not a fireable offense, champ. It's not a fireable offense.
Depends. I'm a little hard because guess what? They had enough to win the championship. See, when you have enough, there's no excuses. I don't care who
Let me ask you a question. How many coaches in NBA history have had enough to win championships and didn't get it done?
A lot, and they should have been fired.
Oh, wait a minute. But not every one of them. Some came back. Listen, I remember Pat Riley blew a title. I think Pat Riley blew a title against the Knicks. Put Rolando Blackman in the game. Oh, but wait a minute. But what I'm saying to you is this. But he's Pat Riley. I mean, he didn't deserve to get fired because of it.
I said months ago about Pat Riley. He's always had ready-made teams. So, I mean, I don't rave about Pat Riley like the rest of the world does. I do. And I'm saying to you is this. I don't think, listen, the only thing we're parting ways on here is I don't believe people deserve to get fired all the time because of those kind of errors that you pointed out. I don't think that D'Antoni deserves an A grade for his performance in Games 6 and 7. I don't think they're fireable offenses based on what he's done over, in totality for this Houston Rockets team. I'm allowed to ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I watch interviews. I watch the mood of teams.
And I love how you say that. I love how you say that. You think we ain't watching? You think you were watching it?
But he blatantly said that if they didn't win the championship, it wasn't a fair season. That's a weak mentality to me. When I look at a team with the best record in basketball and dominating all year, you have enough to win. See,
you have.
New era of sports.
Stop right there. Let's not go off kilter to the big point, champ. Here's the deal. I don't like the comment either. You and I both agree with that. But if you got the Golden State Warriors that you're going up against with everybody else raving about them, it's not a crime for you to say that. It would be bigger to me if Steve Kerr said it than if D'Antoni said it.
Hey, we disagree, and it's okay. But can we move forward to these NBA finals? I just want to say a few things, and I'm done for the day.
Hurry up. Go ahead, bro.
All right, real quick. We back here again for the NBA finals.
Okay.
And my thing is this, from everybody that's listening out here and watch every day these sports shows, all year, he's the greatest. He's the best player ever. He wins with less. He makes everybody better, from Beyonce to Jay-Z.
You talk about LeBron James. You talk about LeBron James.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
We know. I don't even need to say his name anymore.
Yeah, I do, but my listeners need you to say his name.
Right.
They need to hear you say that.
Right. I am a fan of LeBron, but the difference is I hold him accountable. You can't have it both ways. The consolation prize is they will vote him for league MVP, and Kevin Durant will host his second championship, and LeBron will have a losing record against Dirk, Duncan, Curry, and Durant in the NBA Finals. And his finals record right now is 18-27. It will go to 31 losses and probably 19-31 when it's all said and done. And my whole thing is this, with Isaiah Thomas, who is campaigning for a new job or something, needs to stop with the Michael Jordan talk. It needs to stop. LeBron's an all-time great. You could put him top 5, best small forward of all time. It's okay. But he has too many dubious honors. He lost in the Olympics. He's lost back-to-back finals twice. He's about to lose 4 out of 5. I mean, he has the worst finals record in the last 50 years. I mean, if we go talk about stats, we got to bring all of them up.
All right, let me say this to you. Let me say this to you right there. I hear where you're coming from, but I know you. You don't get to come on my show, even though you're my boy, and I love you. You don't get to come on my show and lie to the American people. You are not a fan of LeBron James.
I am.
You stop lying. Don't you dare call my show and lie. Don't you dare do that, Sam. You know you're lying. No. Listen, there's no crime. There's no crime against it. But you are not going to lie to the. Listen, let's just put this on Front Street. Ladies and gentlemen out there listening to me, Champ is my boy. Okay? We go back years. I got nothing but love for him. Champ and I have known each other for over a decade. He's my friend. Let me be very, very clear. I have never met a bigger critic of a basketball player in my life than Champ is of LeBron James. And that is the absolute positive truth. You will not call up to my radio show in front of a national audience and lie through your teeth like that. You are not a LeBron James fan. You have never been a fan. There is no bigger or greater hater of LeBron James than you, and you're my boy. You're damn near family. You're damn near family. And how many times have I ignored your texts and refused to even read them because of how much you hate on LeBron James?
I don't hate on him. I'm holding him accountable. I'm a Dr. Mike for this.
All right.
I'm gonna lead this and I'm gone. When I walked into Akron University, when LeBron James was in high school, I walked up to Eddie Jackson and said, "This kid can be better than Michael Jordan." He checked out at 25 years old with back-to-back MVPs and went to.
And went to my Champ. Are you still there? Are you still there, Champ? All right, we lost Champ. We lost the signal. Maybe it is. Maybe it's best that we lost it because he's trying to lie to the American people. He's trying to lie. Ladies and gentlemen, I got millions of listeners. He's trying to lie to you. There is no greater hater of LeBron James than Champ. None. Absolutely, positively none.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
I want to extend my congratulations to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers for getting to the finals. In LeBron James' case for the 8th consecutive year. Having said all of that, I'm going to stand firm in my position, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody that's salivating over what LeBron James has accomplished this year, go right ahead. I'm not one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, this notion that LeBron James, we've got to put him in the same conversation as Michael Jordan. I want to officially announce to the world that anybody that's thinking like that should be tested for crack. You got to be kidding me. So you go up against an Indiana squad with Victor Oladipo emerging as a star and being a number one option for the first time in his career. He's going up against LeBron James in the first round. That took 7 games. The second round, you go up against a bunch of petrified puppies in Toronto. The only person that seemed to have any kind of heart was Kyle Lowry and Anunoby, and you swept them. And then in the conference finals, there's no Kyrie Irving. There's no Kyrie. And we want to act like LeBron James went through Larry Bird's Boston Celtics and Isaiah Thomas and the Bad Boy Pistons and Magic and Showtime Lakers. We want to act like they did that? Y'all got to be kidding me. I mean, please. Let's see what he does against Golden State, by the way. Let's see what happens there. Tony in Brooklyn, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Tony, go ahead.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm all right,
Thanks
go ahead,
for taking
buddy.
my call. I was just wondering, and again, no disrespect to CP3 because he's a phenomenal player and a generational type of point guard. But I'm wondering why 30 or 40 years ago, you had athletes that played through their injury in one of the most important games of their career. And even a guy like Walt Frazier once was quoted saying, the reason why I put up 36-19 in that final game was because I saw my teammate Willis Reed carry and drag his leg up and down the court, and that just propelled me for a greater height that game.
Well, let's be clear. Hold on, listen. I don't have time for this, Tony, right now. Let's be clear. Willis Reed didn't play that much. He showed up for a few moments and was an inspiration to his team. And after that, he couldn't go either. But I do hear your point, and I do sense the difference. Let's go to Judy in New York. You literally have 30 seconds, Judy. My apologies. Go ahead.
Hi, Stephen A.
Listen, all right, go ahead.
Last night at watching James Harden was very difficult because he seemed like a one-trick pony, and I generally like him, but I was getting a serious vibe of sashaying up the court and doing just enough, or either that or just kind of a little bit confused. He didn't choke, but he didn't go the extra miles.
I got it.
If you're putting up...
Judy, I got to interrupt you because I got to go because I got a hard break. I appreciate the call. He didn't choke. He just had a bad shooting game from three-point range. But you scored 32 points even if it's on 12 or 29 shooting. You didn't choke. I'm not going to accuse him of choking. Plus, there were fouls that he didn't get called for. But don't worry about it. We'll continue with this NBA discussion. Hour number 2 up next. The Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
This is sitting in here for Stephen A. on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon, holiday weekend over, and we can concentrate on an NBA Finals, which will commence here in a couple of days, and kind of seen it before, right? Act number 4 of the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. You want to be part of the program, you know the deal. It's 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. And the Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. And you know when something's so obvious, they call it a no-brainer? Well, here's a big one. Barbasol finally making razors. Introducing the Barbasol Ultra 6 Plus. It's got 6 ultra-thin blades for a close, comfortable shave. You can go to Barbasol.com right now and save some money. That's a no-brainer, too. You want to tweet at me, at Dan Graca, Graca, as we move along here in the program. And before we start to look ahead to Thursday night and the 4th act of Warriors and Cavaliers for the NBA championship, I don't know about you. I'm watching that game last night. Look, all I wanted was a competitive game. And you know that after Houston blew game number 6, saw that halftime lead fall by the wayside, you can attribute that to a couple of things, right? Golden State at home, backs against the wall, tough to knock out a champion, playing for their lives, and oh, by the way, Chris Paul not part of the mix for the Houston Rockets. All those things, when you bunch them together, led to the Warriors coming back in game 6. Now you go to game number 7. And you didn't think that Chris Paul was going to play, at least I didn't. I mean, the hamstring is a tricky thing. One false step, and then he sets that injury back where he's out for 2 months. So it really would have been a miracle for him to play in that game last night. So we find out he's not playing, and I'm just hoping for a close game. Give me a competitive game. I didn't think that Houston was going to win. It would have taken a miracle of epic proportions. But when they came out of the gates quickly last night, Golden State was chirping with one another. Klay Thompson was in foul trouble early. You think, all right, maybe, just maybe, we're setting ourselves up here for a nice little exciting finish where we didn't think we were going to get one. Kept it over to the second quarter, and again, Houston had a halftime lead, double digits. Gordon gets that layup right before the buzzer. They're up 11. You're saying, all right, maybe, but not me. Full disclosure, okay? I saw that movie before. I know how that movie ends, and we just saw it a couple of nights ago in Game 6. You can't count this Golden State team out, even when Houston had the game in their control in those first 24 minutes of basketball. You can't rule them out. And the third quarter was going to be critical. I thought that if Houston could at least stem the tide a little bit, keep their head above water, and fend off that rush, which you knew was coming from Golden State, if they could do that in the third quarter, then maybe we can have a conversation about a real game here over the final 12 minutes. But guess what? It didn't happen. It was history repeating itself again. And Golden State, just like that, were able to wipe out a double-digit deficit. And who was the guy leading the charge? Steph Curry. And I've said it time and time and time again. No disrespect to Kevin Durant. Okay, Kevin Durant's a phenomenal player. He's a finals MVP, one of the top 2-3 players in all the NBA. But when Golden State is at its best, when they are at their most lethal, it is when Steph Curry is running the show and taking charge and knocking down shots from all over the zip code. That is when they are their most dangerous. And when they came back in that third quarter last night, who was the guy leading the charge, leading the brigade? It was Steph. Making threes from all over the place. And once they started to fall, one after another, what did he have in that third quarter last night? 14 points? Once that happened, you knew it was turn out the lights, Houston. Coupled with the fact that the Rockets picked the worst time possible to go cold from beyond the arc. Because let's be honest, Houston only knows one way to play. They only know one way to beat you. And that's just bombs away from anywhere on the floor. And I never thought I would see the day. 27 consecutive missed three-pointers. Think about that for a second. 27. I've never played professional basketball. And as a matter of fact, as I look back on my life, I didn't even play high school basketball. Okay, I like to play recreationally, play for fun, pick up games down at the playground, so on and so forth. I wouldn't call myself a lethal marksman from long range. But I got to be honest with you. I could make one of 27 three-pointers, even in Game 7 of a conference finals. 27? This is supposed to be the highest level of basketball? 27? And you can't blame that on Chris Paul. Don't use Chris Paul's absence as an excuse why they suddenly couldn't miss a shot. Or couldn't make a shot, I should say. 27. And I know that James Harden's going to win the MVP in all probability, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But where was James Harden during those two quarters where they couldn't throw anything in the ocean? The guy who's going to be the MVP of the league, where was he? I mean, that was disgraceful. And not for nothing. When you see that the shots aren't falling, if you're Mike D'Antoni, when do you collect your guys, get them together and say, you know what? I never thought that we would go essentially what adds up to 2 full quarters of being able to make a three-pointer. Maybe let's pump the brakes a little bit on the long-range shots. Let's attack the basket. What do you say? Because once they started doing that again in the fourth quarter, they started to maybe get a little bit of life into their game. Maybe started to put some doubt into Golden State that they were going to run away with this thing. If they did that a little bit sooner, maybe we're talking about the end of a game. Maybe we're talking about a different outcome. Maybe. But what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again to the same result. Well, isn't that what the Houston Rockets approach was last night? When they couldn't make a three-point shot for 2 whole quarters, pretty much? And essentially what that game amounted to was a carbon copy of game number 6. A repeat of the same darn thing. And I understand that James Harden's going to probably win the MVP. But after what we witnessed for the last 48 hours in 2 Game 7s in the NBA playoffs, you watch what LeBron James did for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and then you contrast that with James Harden's performance last night when Rome was burning, when nobody could make a shot, when they needed somebody, anybody, to stop the bleeding, and you're going to tell me that the guy in Houston is the MVP of the league? Look, I get it. I've been following the NBA my whole life. I get it, all right? I know MVP is a regular season award. I totally understand that. But if you're going to give the award out at the end of the postseason, when the most recent thing on anybody's mind who watches the sport is to what happened in the playoffs, and you got LeBron James leading a team of basically nobodies back to the NBA Finals again. Granted, it's the Eastern Conference, and the East isn't any good. Versus what James Harden did down the stretch when he lost his best player, his best teammate in the last couple of games. And the disappearing acts that he showed at times, even during this playoff run. And you're going to tell me that that is the most valuable player in the NBA? It's a mockery of the award. You shouldn't even give out the award. Don't even give it out. If you're going to give the MVP to somebody, you might as well give it to them at the end of the regular season. Right? You might as well have the ceremony, or not even a ceremony. Have a press conference like the day after the regular season ends and announce the vote for the MVP. Just so people can kind of pass it off as, oh, well, that's what happened, up until April. Not what's happening now. When this is supposed to be the money time of the season, when LeBron James's team is still playing. Those dudes on Golden State, they're still playing. And James Harden's home. Because James Harden was part of a team who prides itself on long-distance shooting. They missed 27 consecutive three-pointers in Game 7 at home, in the Western Conference Final. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing when it comes to this stuff? So where are we? We're back at Act 4. Warriors and the Cavaliers. I tweeted this out last night. And again, you could tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. Soon as that game went final last night, what it proved, more than anything else, really doesn't say a heck of a lot about the NBA regular season and its importance, right? I mean, on a multitude of levels. Number one, I just went through the whole diatribe about the MVP, okay? Number two, think about this. The two teams that are in the NBA Finals again, and at the beginning of the season, you thought that we were headed for a collision course, even though you maybe just didn't want to believe it for variety's sake, and maybe trying to inject some new blood into the finals, we still ended up with Cleveland and Golden State. And what makes it even worse this year is that neither one of them had home court advantage, and yet they still found a way to get back to the NBA Finals. Really does not benefit much the NBA regular season, which a lot of people think is too long to begin with. Some people will even regard it as being meaningless to a certain extent. Just get into the playoffs, especially if you're one of these favorites, i.e. the Cavs or the Warriors, and you can find your way to June. And that's what ended up happening. So I want to hear from you guys. I mean, is this a finals that you're looking forward to? I mean, is Golden State Cleveland Part 4 something that you cannot wait to see? Because remember, last year, Part 3 didn't go all that good. And LeBron had a lot more help on that team than he does this time around. Not to mention the fact, who knows if Kevin Love's even going to be cleared to play the first couple of games, flying out to California, dealing with concussion symptoms. You don't mess with that stuff. Are you really optimistic? Despite the fact that this guy is a phenomenal talent and one of the best that we have ever seen, are we really going to sit here and believe that he is going to be able to will this team? And that's what it's going to have to be. Will this team almost perform a miracle act to a championship or even to a seventh game? I'll tell you something. People are talking about this is going to be LeBron James's greatest singular act if he can win this championship, and it's going to end the GOAT debate, greatest of all time, till the end of time. If he could somehow steal this championship, I won't even go that far. How about just getting this team to a Game 7 of the NBA Finals? How about Game 7? But I'm not going to sit here and dismiss anything because we've seen this Golden State team. And all year long, and including this playoffs, they've shown to be a little haphazard at times. Maybe not all locked in. And having that focus that we're so accustomed to seeing from this team year in and year out. I mean, shoot, they got pushed to 7 games by Houston. Right? Couple of those games, Game 4, Game 5, where they couldn't execute down the stretch. They were running around there like chickens with their heads cut off. Very uncharacteristic of the way they play. So maybe they go into this series. Who knows? I'm not them. I'm not inside their heads. But human nature sometimes takes over, and you say, well, why should I pay that team any attention? We kicked their butts last year in the finals when they had a better team. I know they got LeBron, but who cares? He can't go out there and score 100. Eventually, he's going to have to pass the ball to those other guys. Why should we worry about them? We have home court advantage as it is. If maybe they have a little bit of a letdown, maybe LeBron can steal a game or two, but that's as far as I see this thing going. Remember that first year? LeBron was able to somehow get a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals before running out of steam, and then they would lose in 6. But that Golden State team, remember, didn't have Kevin Durant. And you could tell me, well, who knows about Andre Iguodala? He was a finals MVP. I get it. He might not be ready to go here for this series. Come on. No knock on Andre Iguodala. Nice player, brings a lot to that team. And I know especially when you're talking about playing LeBron and guarding LeBron, AI is the guy who's probably going to be drawn most of the assignment. But Golden State still should have their way with this team, even without Iguodala. Let's be real for a second. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these talents on display on the biggest stage. But am I sitting here and expecting a long, long series, an epic series? No, I'm not. Because I got to be realistic about it. It doesn't matter what I want to see. Selfish me, it doesn't matter. All right? Doing a show here, talking to all of you great people, I have to be objective about it. And I would love to be able to sit here and say that LeBron can even get a couple of games. The most I see this thing going is 6. But at the end, it's going to be the Warriors, again, winning the championship. And then we're going to be all left wondering, once July gets here, where is LeBron going to call home next? Or is he not going to move at all? But hopefully we get some length to this series. I'm just not confident that we're going to see it. 888-SAY-ESPN is the telephone number, 888-729-3776. Let's say hi to Danny in Kansas City. Danny, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be much. I think it'll be the same as last year. The Warriors will win in 5. And I agree with you. I don't know why D'Antoni didn't put Joe Johnson when the three-pointers weren't struggling. And I'm so glad the Warriors won then. Kevin Durant stepped up to the plate. Take care of yourself.
All righty. Danny had a few cups of coffee this morning. Nothing wrong with that. It's all good. High energy. I'll give D'Antoni credit for this. And I brought this up even after game number 6. If you're going to be down Chris Paul, all right? And look, I'm happy for Mike D'Antoni that he was able to revive his career a little bit. Because after things fizzled out with the Knicks, and after things fizzled out with the Lakers, I didn't know if Mike D'Antoni would ever be a coach in the NBA again. At least not a head coach, you know? So I was glad to see that he landed on his feet in Houston. He's a nice guy and had success with this team. And it's unfortunate that you lose one of your best players, a guy like Chris Paul who's going to the Hall of Fame, and you don't have him for your 2 biggest games of the season. But it was apparent to me after game number 6. I mean, Mike, if you want to coach college basketball, okay, call up your brother at Marshall, see if he's got an empty seat or if he can make an empty seat next to him on that bench, or maybe you can make some calls and see if a job is going to open up at a Power 5 school someplace, and then you could go to college and play games and coach games where you only play 7 guys. This is the NBA. This is the NBA. You are down one of your best players. That team on the other end of the floor has way more talent than you. You need to be able to use some of those other bodies. James Harden is not equipped to play 43 minutes a night. Eric Gordon is not equipped to play 40 minutes a night. They are not LeBron James. LeBron James is a machine. He is a tank. There is nobody else like him in the NBA. These other guys, they start to wilt out if you push them to those limits. And I think we saw that here over the last couple of games. Now, he tried to get some other guys into the game early on. Ryan Anderson, Joe Johnson that first quarter. That was great. I'm saying, geez, look at this. He's finally going to use his bench. He's finally going to use some of these other NBA players he has sitting on the bench. College coaches play 6-7 guys. Not the NBA. Not the NBA, and especially when you're shorthanded, you know what? You got to have faith in the rest of the guys on your team. You're not just beating that Golden State team with 5-6 players. It's not the Big 12. It's not Texas Tech. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Aiden in Virginia up next. Aiden, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I wanted to first comment on your question about what do I think about the finals. I'm absolutely disgusted about the finals, especially the Eastern Conference. The Cavaliers would be lucky to get to a Game 6. But my main purpose for calling was to ask you, if you were Brad Stevens in the end of Game 7 going into that fourth quarter and then even in the middle of the fourth quarter, what would you have done differently to try to get the win? I feel like the Celtics definitely had a really good chance of winning. I'm a Celtics fan, and I was disgusted by how they executed the game. Should he have taken out Rozier? What should he have done?
Well, Terry Rozier wasn't making any shots. What are you supposed to do? And I mean, it's funny because what you saw last night from Golden State from Houston kind of is what bit the Boston Celtics in game number 7. Boston was only slightly better when shooting from downtown than Houston was. Boston, remember, was 7 for 39. You could sit there and say, well, take out Terry Rozier. Hey, Terry Rozier was 0 for 10 from 3. He was 2 for 14 from the floor in game number 6. It wasn't working. The problem with Boston in game number 7, this talent, this group, which had played well beyond their years in terms of maturity, Jason Tatum played well. Horford played okay to a lesser extent. Who else? Jaylen Brown wasn't good. Terry Rozier couldn't make a shot. And I didn't agree with Boston's approach, though, also just to start chucking them up from all over the gym like they did in that game, because that is not the way they play.
Yeah, it was the shots were way too rushed, and I think Brad needed to find a way to sit down and calm them down and focus more on the paint, because in the beginning, when they were winning, they were getting Horford. They were opening up the quarter line. Horford was getting the ball, and he could easily pass it out, or he was doing a lot of work at the beginning, and that's how they were winning. And then I really was disgusted by the amount of minutes that Rozier got towards the end, because obviously he wasn't giving you anything on offense, and then he's a liability on defense too. Even if you were to put in Brown or Smart instead of him, at least they can play defense.
Well, Marcus Smart still got over 30 minutes in that game. You know what I mean, Aiden? And thank you for the phone call. Eventually what happens is when you get to that stage, and you never want it to present itself at that stage of the game or that stage of the season, your back's up against the wall. It's the most important game you have of the year. And sometimes if you are shorthanded, like the Rockets were, like the Celtics were, sometimes it presents itself in that situation, because remember before the season or before the playoffs started, and when we all pondered and questioned whether LeBron could get back to the finals again. And the question that we kept asking ourselves was, as at least it pertains to the Eastern Conference, who is out there on any of these other teams that is going to be able to stop him? That is number one. And number two, who on any of these other teams do you have confidence in? You got confidence in LeBron to make shots and to get to the tin and to make plays when his team needs it. Who else in this conference that is going to be able to go up against them one-on-one will be able to do the same exact thing? Question is, Boston didn't have that guy. I know that Jason Tatum dunked in LeBron's face. I get that. That's 2 points. That's 2 points. What about the rest of the game? Still counts for one basket. Even if he gave you a meaningless, ordinary layup, still counts for two. Who else was there to answer the bell for Boston? They had no answers. And look, they had a phenomenal season. Missing Kyrie Irving, missing Gordon Hayward, and yet they still got to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. They have nothing to be ashamed about. And you know what? There is a good chance that once we get together again in October of next year, and the season starts, and we're sitting here handicapping the Eastern Conference, if Boston returns its team and adds those two guys that are healthy, I think there's a better chance than not that we're going to be talking about the Boston Celtics on paper as being the ones that are the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. You know, the changing of the guard could be happen. We thought it could happen this year, right? This Cleveland team wasn't any good. They weren't a slam dunk to get to the NBA Finals. Thought it could have happened this year, but injuries factored in. And LeBron was able to take advantage again and get back to the finals. But it's not going to happen forever. Eventually, he's not going to be in the finals. Who knows? He might be playing in the Western Conference, too, next year. We'll find out in July. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Protecting your small business is a big deal. Cover what you've worked so hard for. Visit ProgressiveCommercial.com. And when was the last time you checked your credit scores? Know what they are now, not from a year ago, with Credit Karma. Learn what affects your scores and what you can do to improve them. Maybe you need to dispute an error on your credit report, or maybe you're paying too much interest. Credit Karma could help with that. Is there unclaimed money in your name? Use Credit Karma to check. Once you know where you stand, Credit Karma helps you figure out your next move. They even offer free credit monitoring. Visit creditkarma.com or download the app now. That's creditkarma.com. 888-729-3776. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
You can tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. We threw the question out there. Are you looking forward to a act number 4 between the Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors? Just a couple of tweets that have already come in here. This one's from Algiers Johnson, not interested at all. This NBA Finals. I would rather watch the Pelicans and the Raptors play. I actually don't like it being the same matchup for the fourth straight year. So that's one vote for a little bit of new blood, a little bit of variety when it comes to kind of changing things up. Look, it's not going to be Warriors-Cavaliers forever. I wasn't exactly confident 100% that we were going to get the same matchup again, but this is what we got. And the only thing that we can hope for is we get at least a little bit more of a competitive series than we... Look, I didn't think Rockets-Warriors was going to go 7 games, right? And we got 7 out of that. So who's to say that a team with the arguably one of the greatest players of all time, the guy who's on Mount Rushmore, who's to say that he can't push this thing maybe 6, maybe even get it to a 7th game? It's not probable, but it's possible. Before I get back to the phones, though, I just have to throw this out there because you've heard so much of this. It seems like with each passing day and with each victory and with each achievement that LeBron James engineers. As far as this whole greatest of all time thing, who's better, Jordan, LeBron, Jordan, look. I'm so sick and tired of going back and forth with it. I mean, because this has been going on for years. Let's be honest. Why can't we just appreciate what each guy did on their own? Okay? There's not going to be another LeBron James again. Because as great as Michael Jordan was, he couldn't do things that LeBron James does. As great as LeBron James is, he can't do things that Michael Jordan did. And that goes for Wilt Chamberlain before them. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Oscar Robertson, and Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird, and on and on and on. Each individual player is great in their own right. And it's very difficult to sit here and debate who's better, who's best. You have to have it relative to the era in which they played. Jordan was the greatest in his era. LeBron James is the greatest in his era. And I know that he played a lot of years when a guy named Kobe Bryant was still winning championships. He played a lot of years when a guy named Tim Duncan was winning a bunch of championships for the San Antonio Spurs. Kobe Bryant was a lethal scorer. Kobe Bryant was an assassin late in games. If I had one shot to take in terms of guys from this era late in the game, I'm down 1, 15 seconds left, I'd rather have Kobe take the shot than LeBron James. But who would I rather have on my team? LeBron James. Because LeBron is the greatest in this era. Hands down. All-around game, he's better than Kobe Bryant. I don't care that Kobe won 5 championships. I take him over Kobe Bryant. And I grew up watching Michael Jordan. I remember his peak. I remember the 6 championships. I was there. I saw them. For me, in my lifetime, that's as good as it gets. So if I'm casting a vote, I'm still going MJ. But what LeBron has done over the last several years, especially since going back to Cleveland, he has left little doubt that when you are carving that structure of Mount Rushmore for NBA players and you are including on that list the greatest of the greats who have ever done it, and it's a small, exclusive group, he's on that list. He is there. Remember when he came back to Cleveland? This is even after winning championships with Miami and having that unbelievably impressive performance when his Cavaliers lost in 6 to Golden State. You know, the thought about LeBron James was, well, you know what? He's somewhere, when you're talking about the all-time list, he's somewhere in the lower half of the top 10. You know, he's 7, 8. And then back then there was a debate as to whether who's the best small forward of all time, him or Larry Bird. Remember that? Well, in the years since, LeBron has vaulted up the charts. Okay, he's better than Larry Bird. No knock on Larry Bird. He was a beast, and he's an all-time great. But as I said, find me the guy in the history of the NBA who does the things that this guy does. And I'm not saying that that makes him the greatest of all time. I'm just asking you, find me the guy who does what he does, playing virtually 48 minutes a night in these situations, taking a team of also-rans back to the NBA Finals again, putting an entire franchise on his shoulders. Tough to do. Extremely tough to do. Eric in California is up next. Eric, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you? Eric, you there? We don't have Eric. How about James in Connecticut? James, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, James, what's going on?
Nothing much. I just got to say that LeBron James, huge LeBron James fan, that he's not the MVP of this year. And the only way that he could be is if he was the number 1 seed in the East. Like you said, the East is weak, we were predicting Golden State, Cleveland yet again. And yes, he had a fight.
We overestimated the Eastern Conference. I overestimated the Eastern Conference. Maybe that was just stupidity on my part, hoping that we would get a little bit more competitive a postseason. But we, as a people, overestimated the Eastern Conference crop this year. That is a fact.
Well, I happen to disagree because the Eastern Conference, we had nothing but surprises. We were thinking that the process was going to take much longer. Then you've seen Embiid and Simmons do things, and we're sitting there thinking, that LeBron wouldn't be able to handle them.
Well, wait a sec. How did we then talk? If you want to talk about this process, how are we going to then talk about Philadelphia as being a team that is on the level to compete for a championship when they couldn't beat Boston, a shorthanded Boston team, in the second round?
I was going to bring up Boston next because the Celtics, down two huge players, were able to come back and force LeBron James, like you said, one of the greatest of all time, to the brink of down 2-0, 37-0. The Celtics were, and he had to push as hard as he possibly can to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, something that he's proven that he could do every year in and year out. But my point is that James Harden, okay, so you take him. If you take him off the Rockets squad, what do you have? Essentially a poor-man's Clippers squad from 2 years ago. You got Clint Capella. You don't even have a power forward like Blake Griffin. You have Chris Paul. So my point is Chris Paul couldn't even make it. He couldn't make it to the conference finals, but now here he is.
Eric, we got to let you go. We got to let you go. Okay, can't be using that language on the air. Can't be using that language. All right. And again, let's revisit the Eastern Conference. Let's look back at what happened. If anything, you say that this Cleveland Cavaliers team isn't even that good, which we know. They just have an unbelievable player. They have an all-time great player who took them to the NBA Finals. That's it. Remember, they needed 7 games to get past Indiana in the first round. Indiana, a team at the beginning of the year who we thought was maybe going to be in position to tank this season. Nobody thought Victor Oladipo had this in him. And then the Toronto Raptors, who ended up being the 1 seed, got swept out by Cleveland like they always do, spitting the bit when they face that guy in the playoffs each and every year. If that was supposed to be the class of the Eastern Conference, how can we sit here and take it seriously? How? 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. It's time to ditch your outdated sports drink and switch to Body Armor Sports Drink. With natural flavors and sweeteners and no colors from artificial sources, Body Armor is the more natural, better sports drink. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. We keep this going on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Surprise a friend or loved one today with a bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio. 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. You could tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. A lot of people chiming in as well about LeBron James on Twitter. My pal Exceptional tweets at me and says LeBron James isn't on Kobe's level yet. I disagree. If you've watched their entire careers, what more does LeBron James have to do to convince you that he is at a Kobe Bryant's level? Here's one thing I'll say. If you're going to take the 5 championships from Kobe Bryant, you can't take anything away from him, right? 5 rings, okay? If that's what you're going to base it on, which a lot of people do, unfortunately, his 5 versus LeBron's 3 right now, remember, the first 3 of Kobe's, those were Shaq's teams. Okay? Those were Shaq Diesel as the main cog in those teams. Shaq was the finals MVP for all 3 of those. Okay? They were Shaq's teams. Just like, Tony Parker might have won a finals MVP, for example, in one of those Spurs championships. Still Tim Duncan's teams. Right? Those are still Tim Duncan's teams. And Shaq was the immovable force during those years. Not to say that Kobe didn't contribute or Kobe didn't help, but those were Shaq squads. And not to mention the fact, if you want to go all the way back to 2010, when the Lakers without Shaq beat the Celtics in 7 games to win the championship, Kobe was awful in Game 7. Awful. They won that championship because of Pau Gasol that night, not Kobe. So just some food for thought. Camille's in New Jersey. Camille, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you? Camille going once. We don't have Camille. It's unfortunate. Fabian in Seattle. Fabian, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Good, how are you?
What's up, Fabian?
Not much, man. Hey, I just wanted to agree with you earlier on the show. You're talking about the MVP vote. 100% agree. I don't understand why they don't have it. Well, they just put it out there before the playoffs even start. If at all, they should have it towards the end of the season, because if you're a real MVP, you're going to take your team all the way to the chip.
Well, do you remember what they did, okay, for a lot of years? And Fabian, thank you for the phone call. They would announce these individual awards like during the playoffs, right? And they would just have a press release and say, so-and-so is the MVP of the league, right? Steph Curry's the MVP of the league. And they'd have a press conference. And then if his team was still playing, it was either in the second round of the playoffs or the conference finals. They would present him with the MVP trophy. You know, the commissioner would be there, and it would be at center court before, you know, whatever home game they were playing in that round of the playoffs. And he would get a standing ovation from everybody, and he would take a bow. And that's how you got the MVP award. But now the NBA wants to go like the NFL does and the NHL does and say, well, wait a sec, why don't we have our award show at the end of the year? Because they had that, I think last season was the first one, when it was like way in like late June. They had it in New York, and they gave out all these awards or whatnot. And by then, you're not even thinking about what happened during the previous regular season. Like, it's a horrible idea. And think about even this year, for example, how foolish it's going to look. You're going to have James Harden win the MVP after LeBron James takes his team to the finals again and James Harden crashed out of the playoffs. You're going to have Dwayne Casey, in all likelihood, win the Coach of the Year award because these votes were done, remember, at the end of the regular season. Dwayne Casey's going to win the Coach of the Year award, and he's been fired already. Like, think of how ridiculous this is going to look. Grab some popcorn, sit on the couch, and laugh your rear end off watching that show. It's going to be hilarious. Eric in California next. Eric, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Dan.
Eric.
So I wanted to do... Hello, can you hear me?
Gotcha, Eric. What's up, bud?
I wanted to say two things. I got Cavs in 6. Here we go.
Okay.
You've been...
Wait. Cavs in 6? Cavs are winning this thing?
You heard me right, Dan.
Wow.
And mind you, I'm kind of playing. I'm not a homer. I should be a homer, but I'm not.
Okay.
LeBron, this whole year has been killing it. The Warriors have no big. So if
yeah, but who has a big in the NBA? Nobody has a big in the NBA.
Hear me out, Dan. If Thompson can get rid of the Kardashian curse, and what's his name, JR and Kyle can do their thing like they should be doing, which they're not. You got no one can hold LeBron. LeBron can guard KD. KD's going to get his, but nonetheless, Steph had a subpar game 2 and 3. And Thompson, he's a hit or miss. Still all great shooters, great team. The Warriors are bad people. But I got the Cavs in 6. Part 2, you said earlier in the segment, you could go 1 for 29.
That's correct.
Now, you also discredited these cats are running around chasing these stars, elite stars, and now they have to go ahead and jack up threes. I would say I'm not a money spender, but I got a decent amount of money that if you did wind sprints for maybe 20, 30 minutes, you couldn't hit 1 for 29.
Eric, I'll tell you something, and I thank you for the phone call, and you get back to us, all right? But if I was a professional athlete and that was my job, number one, I'd be in better shape. I'd be in shape to go play a Game 7 in the NBA playoffs. I can make 1 out of 27 three-pointers. I'm sorry. I would like to think that I could. I mean, that is putrid. Absolutely putrid. And here's the thing I'll say before the NBA Finals gets ready. LeBron could do the miracle work like he's done all up until this point. Who else is coming along for the ride and stepping up? That's the only way they're going to have success. Who else in this supporting cast, pick the name out of the hat, is actually going to step up in these games? 30 for 30 podcasts have returned. Subscribe to 30 for 30 podcasts right now in the Listen tab of the ESPN app or on Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Delta, where it's our goal to connect your life in the air to your life on the ground. It's been fun sitting in here for Stephen A. today. You can tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. I got Warriors in 6. I wish I could say any differently, but got to be smart about it. It's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon here. Enjoy the rest of your day on ESPN Radio.